Hi everyone, so here's a really quick tutorial on how to write your hypotheses. In your IA, you need to make sure that your hypotheses are matching up with your independent variable, your dependent variable, and your target population. So making sure that you include these three different aspects to a null and a research hypothesis is really important so that the examiner can see what the whole experiment was about, and then they're looking in your report to see whether that matches up. So we've got a clearly operationalized independent variable, a clearly operationalized dependent variable. Remember, the dependent variable is what the researcher is observing, and the independent variable is what they're manipulating. So they change this, the researcher changes this, and they observe this. And then the identification of the population to be studied. So when writing a null hypothesis, it should state that there is no significant relationship between the two variables being studied. In other words, any difference exists due to chance. Now you can put this in at the end, that's fine to do. On your null hypothesis. It's not completely necessary, but you can do it. So here's a really firm foundational example of how you might choose to write yours. And when I think of null hypothesis, I just think of linguistic math. I'm inputting a formula, I'm inputting my information into a formula to generate a sentence. So this, remember, is the null hypothesis, the negation. There will be no significant difference in the number of words recalled from a list of 30 words by 10th grade English language students, whether the light is on or off. So here we can see the identification of the population, 10th grade English language students. Really common error in IAs for students is that they don't put the population to be studied in their null hypothesis. And here we see light is on or light is off. So this is controlled by the researcher. So it's the independent variable because the researcher is deciding who is in the group with the light on and who is in the group with the light off. And number of words recalled from a list of 30 words. Well, this is what they're measuring. The dependent variable. They're trying to see whether the group with the light on will remember more or less words than the group with the light off. So the operationalization of these is very exact. It's telling us exactly the behavior that the researchers are looking at. When you're writing yours, try and play around with these words. Some of the null hypotheses I read, they don't match up with this, and they're very general. They don't operationalize the idea at all. So for example, instead of writing number of words recalled from a list of 30, they might write memory recall. Well, when we're reading your experiment, we don't know what you mean by memory recall unless you tell us specifically what you were observing in your experiment. It's a very broad term. So when we're doing a specific experiment, we need to say what we're observing exactly. So when writing an experimental hypothesis, you will predict that there will be a difference between the two conditions. So see, with the null hypothesis, there's no significant relationship. But with the experimental, or sometimes called research hypothesis, there will be a significant difference. Okay, so here is the hypothesis for the null hypothesis here. 10th grade English language students will recall more words from a list of 30 words when the light is on than when the light is off. So it's very affirmative. Now, at this point in the video, you could pause the video here and have a look at this question. Try and write a null and a research hypothesis. Identify the IV and the DV for each of the following.